Hey everyone, my name is Ben Chaish, and today we are going to check out probably the most oddball, off-the-wall lens that I've definitely ever used. It's a lens that when they actually offered to send it to me, I just said no, because I said, I don't know what I would do with this. And they said, just take it, let's see. And once I did, I was actually surprised and whatever enough that I just went for it. And that is the TTArtisan 11mm f2.8 that is for the GFX mount. So right off the bat, this is definitely a 35mm format lens, and you can see by the fact that they just basically slapped an adapter on a 35mm style lens, and 11mm already is just absurdly wide. 21mm is my widest on my Leica kit, and the widest that I've ever used for anything was a 15mm Voigtlander that I used for a little while, and that was pretty absurd. But when you start taking into account the medium format sensor and 11mm, that's where we're getting in sub 10 territory, and then it's just like bonkers wide. If you were expecting this lens to cover the entire sensor, you would be very, very disappointed. So let's see here. Let's see how much I can show. So I'm facing this straight down right here. The end of my table is right here, and you could still see off the desk from here. Oh my gosh. From right here, you can see still outside. So the coverage on this is just like absolutely absurd. So if you need the widest lens that I could comprehend, this could definitely do some creative things for you. And as you can see, I don't know that much about lens design, but it definitely has a bulbous front element. And I know that there's some lenses, like I had the Sigma 20mm that had a pretty bulbous front element, and it was a regular rectilinear lens. But this one definitely has that circular fisheye warp massive distortion to it. But I mean, it kind of still works. Let's see how far I have to get down here if I can. Yeah, it's probably not gonna happen, but you can just see in here how stinking wide. Like, I mean, you see the whole end of my table, you see all the other side, you know, it's like just absurdly wide. I don't know, I feel like I'm giving myself almost like a creative challenge to find a way to use this in an actual professional setting, because it was another one of those lenses where it's an absurd lens. Like it shouldn't exist really, especially for this mount, but technically it can take up more of the GFX mount than it could. All right, so on a 35mm.
Wanted to just show, although you very, very clearly see the edges of the frame here, wanted to kind of show the differences and the rationale of, I guess, why this can exist for the medium format mounts, because it can, and oddly enough, the distortion is obviously absurd, but vignetting isn't really much of an issue. Let's say that you just kind of dumped this canvas off here. So this is obviously from our full frame of the medium format 44x33. And this is the exact crop that the 35mm frame would be. So you're going from here to here. So you can definitely see that there's a little bit more range to be had here, I guess. If you're here, you could also, let's say, include here. You know, you have all that extra space that is clean. You could do something in a square format, possibly. Or if you wanted to expand and go more 4x3, you could definitely get a little bit more out of this frame. Clearly not to the full extent, but there is extra sensor size there that is going unutilized by the 35mm format. And so if you kind of think of it in those terms, I guess it makes a little bit more sense if, you know, this look is something that you're into.
I guess it makes sense that you could use it in this. I would rather have it in another mount that I could then mount on the GFX probably, like, you know, having this in the Leica M mount and then just putting on, you know, one of these adapters. For someone like me that has both, would probably make more sense.
Okay, so here is your daily dose of absolutely ridiculous things. We've got our 11mm crazy lens of glory. So this, again, at 11mm, just, I mean, ridiculous. So the only thing about all this stuff is TTArtisans definitely does not have any sort of profile correction for this at all. And so if you did want to get rid of the profile corrections that are either from Samyang, or we've done a few with some others as well. And then this is what the Rokinon version looks like. I mean, it's pretty absurd. So those that follow the channel just in general, this is actually the thumbnail I made for my Canon 16mm video. It's a 16mm, so I wanted a wider frame, and this is the only other wide angle I had. So figured I would give it the check here. So if we go back, we can see that I've actually recentered things and added a profile correction. So you can definitely see in the corners, we got that stuff going on. One of the interesting things that we've kind of mentioned is how close you can get, but how far away things seem. So this is me right up close, and obviously you can see a crazy amount of, you know, distortion and all that kind of stuff. And this is kind of what it looks like straight out. So if you were kind of into that look, you know, if you didn't mind the more bulbous nature of the rest of it, you could definitely crop in to something like this and get a cleaner image for sure. So here's kind of what it looks like in some interiors. Here's the Samyang profile, and then this is with the Rokinon, both on the same photo, but you can see how it kind of shifts a little bit. And then if we want to take the profile corrections off entirely, this is kind of what my kitchen looks like into my living room and everything. And for the sake of feeling like a fool, this is what this looks like, a mirror selfie of sorts. This is actually cropped to 35mm as well. And then, so this is where you can see on a 35mm frame, this is what you'd get straight out of camera. And then if you want to try to make some adjustments, this is what we're looking at. One more interior just to try to get to you to see what making straight lines would make out of this thing. I'm sure someone that knows way more about lens corrections could help, but yeah, that's how we're feeling. And here's the last one. I think, you know, if you're doing something close up, this makes maybe more sense. This is focused straight up in the air, and you can see that there's actually a lot of detail here in this water droplet, and I am like right on top of this. But if you actually turn some sort of profile correction on for a fisheye, this is just going to look drastically different. So you kind of have to make the distinction between like, okay, do you want straight lines or do you want something that looks a little bit more normal? You're not going to get normal out of this in general, but yeah. And then one last thing of note, as I was walking up to take this photo, I 100% ran into the mirror because I didn't realize how close I was, because it is so wide that even though it didn't seem like I was going to be touching the mirror with the lens, I 100% did. It ran straight into it. So anyway, that's what we're looking at here.
Now, the things that I don't like, I don't know why they don't just stick with the branding of some of their other cameras, like this 90s style cursive font and all that different, like I kind of don't get that. And then another thing that just always annoys me because I'm not a videographer is the aperture that is just not clicked. I don't want to be bumping this and shooting at, you know, 2.9 or 3.8 or something. Like, I want to know that I'm at 2.8 or I'm at 4 or 5.6 or something like that. So those are pretty annoying things. But in terms of hyperfocal distance and stuff, having such a wide lens, you could toss this thing at f8 and everything from infinity to 0.3 meters, or basically like a foot, is going to be in focus. And not that you would want to, but it focuses down to 0.17 meters, which is like my ring on my hand right there. So ridiculously close, but also ridiculously wide. So it's another one of those, I don't know why you would need that, but since it does it, I mean, might as well have the feature, right? So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I wasn't really planning on making this video, but it was just one of those things that was so intriguing to me that I figured, you know, this lens exists, and I'm sure there are some people out there that are curious as to how this performs and looks on a GFX sensor. It's not an expensive lens, and so, you know, if you're looking for something to kind of spice up your life a little bit, this lens might actually be for you. So if you're interested in more videos like this, I have a ton of Leica M and GFX content on the channel. I can't exactly say that they're going to be as interesting or whatever as this one in particular, but if you are interested in either of those systems, subscribing would be a great idea. Give the video a thumbs up if you made it this far. That definitely helps out the channel, and I will see you all on the next one.